This is Outnumbered, and we are glad you are here. I'm Harris Faulkner, and here on the couch today, Heather Childers, Jedediah Bila, Katie Pavlich, and today's hashtag one lucky guy, Brian Kilmeade, is here, and he is outnumbered. Good to see you.
Yes, I just found out how lucky I was a short time ago, but now I feel lucky.
I know. We had some flight problems, and then you flew in.
I'm privileged to be here. We have so much to talk about. I cannot believe how busy a weekend it was.
Heather Childers joining us for the first time. Welcome.
Welcome to the set.
Yeah.
Aboard. It's great to have you here.
Sandra taking some days off, so I'm very happy to be here. Bright and early in the morning, as well as Brian. We've been here for a while, but this is great.
This is a big news day, which you guys have already been working on this morning, right? So let's get to it. New fallout over the Taliban prisoner swap that freed an American soldier. Reports Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's parents were allowed to take part in secure secret video conferences with top U.S. officials, perhaps as many as 20 times per year. And as we're learning, that would have been unprecedented access. And we're getting reports of Bergdahl's brutal treatment by his captors, and that Bergdahl, who's recovering at a U.S. military hospital in Germany, is refusing to talk with his parents. All of this as the White House appears to be in damage control over the release of 5 top Taliban leaders. Secretary of State John Kerry says any idea that the prisoner exchange for Bergdahl puts American lives at risk, in his words, is baloney.
I don't think anybody should doubt the capacity of the United States of America to protect Americans.
You meaning you
Nobody.
would kill them?
No one should doubt the capacity of America to protect Americans. And the President has always said he will do whatever is necessary in order to protect the United States of America.
But top Democrats like Dianne Feinstein, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, remain uneasy about the release of what they're calling the Taliban 5.
I heard John Kerry this morning say, you know, don't worry about them in Doha. It's hard to be comfortable when you really haven't been briefed on the intricacies of carrying out this agreement.
That sounds like a registered complaint. Heather Childers, I want to go to you first on this, about this information that we're learning about, this unprecedented access. And you've been looking at some of the material that family got to see.
Yeah, that really concerned me, especially after we know that there were comments from the father himself. He tweeted out, you know, his support for al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And I have this article. It was put in the Washington Times, and it quoted a former government official involved in American hostage situations and said that he had never heard ever of a family given such access, and he questioned whether the sensitive material and the information could have been conveyed, you know, to the Bergdahl family, or should have been.
So what you're saying is, were there any secrets that were given
Exactly.
away? Yeah,
you know,
that would be the big
especially when we know what the father was saying outside of these meetings.
Right, and one thing we've been doing on Outnumbered and other newscasts is to simply put out there, we can't confirm the tweets from Bergdahl's dad. Some of them were deleted, but we do know that something existed on Twitter, and so we can work on our own to try to report the facts on that.
You know,
Jedediah?
one of the arguments they made for why they didn't go to Congress was because they were so afraid that this information could potentially get out. So they didn't go to Congress because they were worried the information could get out, but they could let the parents in on this top secret information on these video conference calls. I'm sorry, guys, but that argument just doesn't hold anymore.
Well, and it looks like his parents were briefed at a greater detail than Congress was. I mean, when you have Senator Dianne Feinstein not even tiptoeing around this idea that maybe the White House didn't inform them as much. Maybe, you know, we hear a lot about the word misled when we talk about things in Washington. Not only when this first came out did she say they completely broke the law in totality when it came to not giving Congress a 30-day notice, but now we're a week out from when the swap took place, when the announcement in the Rose Garden took place, and she's on a Sunday show saying, I still have no information. So it's not like they did it, went to her and said, here are the details of what went on. We're sorry that we didn't come to you first, and now we're seeing these reports that the family was getting more details than Senator Dianne Feinstein, who is supposed to be an Obama White House ally.
Well, but she's on the Intel Committee.
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't matter how much they were friends or not.
Right.
She's supposed to be able to be trusted with this kind of material because she's on the Intelligence Committee. You know, Brian, something else that Dianne Feinstein has said is that this was talked about, this type of swap, and we know this too from Hillary Clinton, was talked about as much as 2 years ago. And her feelings were then that there were some pretty strong voices inside Congress against this swap. Was this sort of a political thing that the president would have gone around Congress?
Well, I think so. I think he probably realized he's going to get some pushback if he goes to do this. So I have a better idea. Why don't we not tell him and say it was urgent? Is an urgent matter. Really? Well, it turns out physically it was an urgent matter, and there's no sense also that his life would have been taken any more in May or June than last May or the June prior. You're always in danger with your Al-Qaeda. I think one of the biggest things that I took from the Sunday shows is that Senator Dianne Feinstein, 1 week later, has still not been read in. They haven't pulled her in. She's not a heretic. She's
you don't
not
think
somebody
it's happened and that we just don't know about it?
Why would she come out last week and say, yesterday, and say, I still don't know. I still can't answer those questions. I still don't understand. I watched Secretary of State Kerry this morning, and here's where I disagree. Wait a second. All the White House had to do was rein her in a second. Say, listen, sorry about that, Senator. Let me tell you, let's get you up to date. Now go out there and tell the nation that you're on board with this. And they haven't even taken the time to do it.
I want to talk about political toxicity, if we can, with you, Jedediah, and just how much trouble this White House is facing in terms of messaging right now and how this whole thing rolled out.
Oh, it's a huge problem. And I think it's every time they open their mouths, I think it becomes a bigger problem. I mean, for Kerry to come out and now say it's baloney that releasing these detainees puts
interesting
US
choice of
troops
words.
at risk. Is he prepared to stand by that statement so that if anything does happen to U.S. troops and they can trace it back to the release of these 5 guys, is he prepared to stand by that? Is the administration prepared to stand by that statement? I highly doubt it.
I'll add something else to that, which is unbelievable. Do we care at all what happens after we leave? Because no one's even bringing up what happens after we leave. If we want the Taliban to take control of that country and the president just wants to take a bow and say, I got you out of here, well, we're on the right track.
Well,
but if we say to
care.
ourselves it matters that if Abdullah, the guy that we liked that was working with Massoud, is a guy that Geraldo knows for years, is Western educated, if we want him to have a chance, we will not leave that country in control with the Taliban right here and the guys that we help prop up right here.
I think that's a much bigger issue, but with the issue of the question you asked of the White House, the politicizing aspect and the messaging aspect, the Obama White House and part of their playbook is always accusing Republicans of being political when it comes to a scandal that breaks. Name one, that's what they do. In this case, they can't do it because Dianne Feinstein is not only talking about this and not being detailed and briefed about it, but she's calling out Obama administration officials by name. And when it comes to the messaging on this, where's President Obama when he's collaborating with Secretary of State John Kerry on how they're going to approach this? President Obama last week said, quote, is there a possibility of some of these guys who were released coming back and attacking us and having problems with our troops? Absolutely, he said. And yet you have Senator Kerry, saying it's baloney to ever think that. And then further, you had Nurullah Nouri, who was one of the guys who was released, go immediately as he landed, state publicly, I'm going to get back to Afghanistan and I'm going to attack Americans. And it's not just about U.S. troops in Afghanistan. It's about Americans here at home.
Right.
Let's not forget these guys were actually involved and really good friends with all of the people who planned 9/11.
And
you bring up a great point.
It's not the first time that mixed messages have come from this White House, so that's not entirely unexpected. But what you were getting to, the next thing that will happen here is that this puts our troops and Americans at greater risk because the Taliban and other terrorist organizations, they see what America is willing to do.
Well, the other thing that incentivizes them, and it's something that we've heard Representative Mike Rogers from Michigan talking about and John McCain this weekend, too, Senator from Arizona, is the fact that now you have 5 guys who survived Gitmo.
Yep.
And you want to talk about
stars.
a recruiting tool.
Right.
I mean, they could literally, and I'm not trying to be funny here, they could go on a speaking tour at this point and recruit members.
They will.
They're going to know our ways, our practices, the way we can be intimidated, the way it started, and the way America has broken down. They've also been read in. They're allowed to read newspapers and keep up to date and keep correspondence. So they would say, this way America did it. This is how our will gradually got broken from when I first got captured in 01 to where we're at in 08. And then we look at where 014, dramatically different. This is where America is willing to bend.
What about
we don't know. What about what Bergdahl may have shared with the Taliban while he was being held captive as well?
Yeah, we don't know that. I mean, I know the integration process that he's in, that's what they call it. Anyway, where he is now at that hospital in Germany will probably reveal some of that. But I always wondered, well, how much would he have known anyway?
Right.
Jedediah, there's something else, too, and I mentioned Rogers and McCain. And the threat of that was that we have constituted the Taliban government. We have put them back on a global sphere with everybody else that we'll do bargaining with.
Right. And the other issue is also about the messaging I have to throw in is that these are issues that the whole country is united behind. The reason this is a problem for the Obama administration, much like the VA situation, is because this isn't an issue where they can say, well, Republicans are talking about this. This is all Republicans. This is Republicans. This is Democrats. This is independents. This is people united across the country saying this was a bad decision and you guys underestimated our ability to do this research and our ability to know exactly what you're doing and ask tough questions. So I think that's why the messaging isn't working. Absolutely, the Taliban is empowered. They're 5 guys, the 5 guys that they requested and put on a list and said, this is what we want. The Obama team handed those 5 guys over and had no preconditions, nothing. They are empowered right now.
Well, and the biggest question here is, was it worth it? And Time Magazine has Bo Bergdahl on their cover with that exact question. And one thing I think is going to be interesting moving forward is whether Bo Bergdahl gives our intelligence agencies any information about the Taliban and how cooperative he is when it comes to giving them the things that they're wondering about during his 5 years of captivity.
All right, so what's next in this is on Wednesday, the scheduled hearing in the House with Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and what he may say that he knows at this point. Because remember, in the beginning, when he was asked about this, he said he didn't know anything about the desertion claims against Bo Bergdahl. Before we go,
how could that be?
Very, very quickly, overarch it for us why people should care.
Why should people care about what the Secretary of Defense will say?
What's happening with this story?
All I could tell you is in 2001, just think to yourselves, the Taliban were approached and were told, if you give over al-Qaeda, you stop your adherence to that terror organization, you will not be invaded. They said, tough, we're sticking with you. These are the guys that made it possible, that made their relationship work. The coal doesn't blow up and our towers don't fall if the Taliban don't exist. And al-Qaeda would not be there if the Taliban don't exist. Now they're on the doorstep of taking back that country, and guess who's already putting roots back in Afghanistan right now, even though we're leaving, and that is al-Qaeda.
All right, let's move on. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton with new remarks on the terror attack against our U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Remember, we lost 4 Americans that night, including our ambassador to the country. Her answer to the key question, will she testify about it? And Catholic school parents are so outraged over a curriculum decision by one archdiocese, some of them are turning to homeschooling instead. They are fired up. We'll tell you why, and you stand by and stay with us on Outnumbered. We are glad you're here.